Good evening, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Vargas. We begin this Friday night with peace at last in Gaza. The question is, how long will it last? In order for the peace to last, Hamas needs to hold up its end of the bargain and release all 48 remaining Israeli hostages, both living and dead. The terrorists faced a deadline of noon local time on Monday to do this, but dealing with Hamas is like trying to hold a fistful of sand. Tonight, it's uncertain if Hamas actually knows where all the bodies are. Just moments ago at the White House, President Trump says he is confident this peace will hold.
And how confident are you that the ceasefire will hold?
I think it'll hold, yeah. I think it'll hold. They're all tired of the fighting.
Now, other parts of this historic peace ceasefire deal are already in effect. As part of phase one, Israel kept its own promise today to withdraw its military from parts of Gaza. Tens of thousands of Palestinians began walking back through the rubble to their homes in that war-torn enclave. Israeli troops will still remain in some areas of Gaza, and in Israel, 200 American troops will be around to monitor the progress of this peace deal. American flags were draped around Jerusalem today, as well as a big billboard with a message thanking President Trump. The White House says the president will depart for the Middle East on Sunday to see this deal through. Meanwhile, back here at home, the president received praise for his peace efforts from maybe the last person you'd expect, his longtime political nemesis. Now, one of the Arab leaders who played a central role in mediating that plan was Qatar's prime minister. At the Pentagon today, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth highlighted that help while meeting with Qatar's defense chief.
You have been a core part of what has unfolded in Gaza, a historic moment. No one other than President Trump could have achieved the peace that what we believe will be a lasting peace in Gaza, and Qatar played a substantial role from the beginning.
Hegseth went on to announce that the United States will soon host a brand new Qatari Air Force base to be built in Idaho.
Location will be host a contingent of Qatari F-15s and pilots to enhance our combined training, increase lethality, interoperability. It's just another example of our partnership.
So all this comes after President Trump's recent executive order promising to protect Qatar in the event of a military attack, including providing American military support to Qatar if necessary. In the meantime, let's go right now to NewsNation's Robert Sherman for us live in Tel Aviv. Robert, these next few days are so critical.
So critical, Elizabeth. The 72-hour clock is now running, and Israel is preparing to release 2,000 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for 48 hostages. And already you're seeing the logistical processes being put in motion to receive those hostages. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at Sheba Hospital earlier today, meeting with medical staffers who are awaiting these hostages to return, hostages who spent more than 2 years in Hamas tunnels, malnourished and emotionally scarred. Israel is also preparing to welcome President Trump. What we know about his movements will be Sunday evening. He'll be heading out to the Middle East, arriving here in Israel early Monday morning. He'll address Israel's legislative body, the Knesset. Then, shortly thereafter, he'll be heading to Egypt, and then he'll be back to Washington. It's a quick trip here to the region. What we saw here today in Gaza, massive columns of Palestinians moving north along the Mediterranean, returning home, hoping that they'll be able to stay and that there will be lasting peace. As we saw here this week, Elizabeth, embedding exclusively inside of Gaza, many of them, those that we spoke with, tired, hungry, hoping that peace will last. We know that the UN will also be flooding the enclave with aid, and they say they have 170,000 metric tons at the ready to go. This is all phase one. Coming after, in theory, is phase two, but there's a lot still to be talked about there. This is in regards to governance of Gaza, demilitarization of Hamas, and even admittedly from many negotiators, they don't have the answers to all those questions just yet. Elizabeth?
All right, Robert Sherman on what's at stake here. Thank you so much, live from Israel. So now the countdown is on for Hamas to hold up its end of the deal and release those 48 Israeli and American hostages by Monday. Earlier, I spoke with someone who knows quite a bit about how these negotiations play out. Ambassador Roger Carsons, former special presidential envoy for hostage affairs under Presidents Trump and Biden. Ambassador, you say what we're witnessing here is peace through pressure. President Trump literally squeezing Benjamin Netanyahu into agreeing to this deal, along with the Arab nations squeezing Hamas. How did Trump manage to do this when so many others have failed?
You know, I'll give you something that may be unconventional, but I found in negotiating when high-stakes negotiations, especially on hostage issues, a lot of times you can do all the detailed work, get the mathematics of the negotiations set up, but at a certain point you have to switch to intuition and play off your gut. And I think President Trump and some of his negotiators are pretty good at that. I think they felt the moment, they knew it was right. You can see that the pressure started at the very tail end of the UN General Assembly that took place in New York the last week of September, but it also continued into the first part of October. And different bits of pressure were being put on different allies to try to bring this all to bear, with the end result being Hamas feeling a lot of pressure and Israel feeling a lot of pressure. And it's given us a result. But really, I'd say the answer that I might offer is that I think Trump's intuition and those of his negotiators played a very large role here.
And the fact that he was able to force Netanyahu to do this. I mean, we know that President Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu, President Obama before him, they had very tense and often unproductive relationships with Benjamin Netanyahu. Trump made him do this.
You know, I might even offer a different take. I think you can make that argument. One thing I'd also say is that the conditions were constantly changing. Having spent a good chunk of my life in the military before I went into the State Department, one thing that was always important to us was to set down military conditions to, I guess, lay down the groundwork for political progress. And I think the IDF did an incredible job on 7 fronts in this war. That kind of contributed to this. I think clearly President Trump picking up the phone call and calling Netanyahu, particularly after the strike that took place in Qatar, there's no doubt that that played a huge role. But there was a lot of pressure. And there was a phrase that we used to use about 25 years ago called smart power. This is almost like smart pressure. People being very nuanced and hitting different pressure points in different parts of the stakeholder community to get this end result. And I have to say, it's pretty masterful.
Israel is now preparing, as you know, to receive these hostages. This is a sensitive and complex thing. These hostages have been held, almost all of them, underground in tunnels. They've been starved. They've been tortured. What happens once they get out?
You go into something called post-isolation support activities. And we actually worked quite a bit with the Israelis at the very beginning of this. I think at a certain point, the U.S. felt like we had something that we wanted to showcase to the Israelis. But over time, I would say that they've now taken a lead in this really niche field. And that's what you do when a person comes back from this environment. A lot of it's going to be physical. A lot of it's going to be psychological. They're going to make sure that the body's functioning okay, because things happen when you're gone for that long. Not only may some have been shot, wounded, or had infections since then, but truly in that amount of time, you could have a cancerous node that's just been growing that you never would have guessed or known about. So they get a very detailed medical review, but they'll also get a psychological baseline because they're going to have to do some work over the next few years to try to get their lives on track again, with both medically, physically, psychologically. And frankly, it's going to be a challenge to reintegrate, and they're not going to reintegrate into their old lives. The society's changed a little bit, their families have changed a bit, but their lives have changed as well.
Yeah.
So the idea that they're going to go back into their former selves, no, they're actually going to have to start something new and afresh. And what the Israelis are going to do when they come back will put them on the right track.
Hamas has said it isn't even sure where some of the remains of the 28 or so hostages who died are. Can they find them by Monday when this big release of these hostages is supposed to happen?
I would seriously doubt it. I think, if they give a good faith effort and try to track down everyone they possibly can in terms of the remains, that will be a good thing. But I think you're going to see the Israelis pulling together a task force, most likely under the leadership of my friend Gal Hirsch, who is my Israeli counterpart during this entire process. And they're going to have to work after the fact to do everything from working with different groups, try to find out who might have been buried where, who might have been seen at what point. So the work will probably still continue. And for people like Gal or people who've been in this business, it's never done until you bring everyone home. The families need and deserve some closure. So whether someone is alive or whether they passed away, been murdered, died, they've got to come home. And I know the Israelis can put absolutely.
Yeah. So what happens to Hamas now? That has really not been determined. How much do they disarm? Who verifies they're disarming? Where do they go?
You know, the details have yet to be worked out. And that's actually, I think, a smart negotiating technique. You know, you could actually grind a negotiation to a halt if you're trying to get all those details up front. They're going to have to work that out in phase 2. I actually had some experience this after a certain war that took place in the late 90s as a special forces officer. And disarming is actually very challenging. It's something that we study in the Special Forces qualification course. So it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. The verification is going to be challenging. Who does the verifying will also play a significant role. I'm hoping that it's members of the Arab states, but that's something that's going to have to be worked out. There are actually tried and true methods to make that happen. It's not like everyone's going to be starting from scratch, but there are political considerations and military considerations, because I'd be willing to bet that Hamas actually really doesn't want to fully give up everything that they have.
Yeah, they're a brutal terroristic group, just celebrating the October 7th attacks a few days ago on the anniversary, calling it a glorious and heroic day. So that's who we're dealing with. Ambassador Roger Carson's great to talk to you. I know you're on your way to Tel Aviv and to witness this historic release of the hostages and hopefully the beginning of a peace deal firsthand. Thank you for joining us.
All right, take care. Thank you very much.
My next guest tonight is Ruby Chen. He, as you know, is one of the fathers of one of those hostages, the youngest American-Israeli hostage still being held. Ruby's 19-year-old son, Itai, was serving as an IDF soldier on October 7th. And for months, the Chens endured the agony that all these hostage families know so well. And then the IDF informed them that they believe his son is dead. In these last hours before this big release, Ruby Chen is preparing for 2 possibilities: to finally see his son's body and finally mourn his death, or to find their prayers have come true and that he somehow survived. Ruby joined me from Israel a short time ago. Ruby, you've said you're feeling a jumble of emotions right now: excitement, anticipation, even anxiety. Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's like a 50-ton hammer heading your way. You know, you're not sure if you're going to be able to dodge it or not. We, have still some hopes that maybe something of a different ending will happen for us. But we understand that the most realistic possibility is that Itai is not going to come out alive. But just continuing on your conversation with Ambassador Carstens, so there's once a hostage comes back, he has a full life of activities to fill it in. And we, the families, the parents of those that will not come out alive, actually have a very big void and inactivity all of a sudden, which is a very different type of process to go through. So it's much more different than what you had your conversation with Ambassador Carstens, kind of walking through that process.
I know a part of you is still hoping that the IDF is wrong and that Itai will come back alive. It must be, I don't know, you're preparing yourself for, the most devastating thing in the world, which is to get your son's body, and yet still hoping for the most amazing miracle in the world, which is that your son will somehow come out alive.
Yeah, it's to some distinction of the Hamas terrorist organization that to this date have not provided any type of acknowledgement that even that Itai is in their possession, less alone what his physical status is. So it's just based on intelligence, and we just don't know. Hamas have an obligation to give back all the 48 hostages. There is the scenario that they will not be able to find and deliver all of those 48 hostages. And then the question is, what now? The language of the agreement that was put in place was mostly around concepts and less about details. So there's no sanctions or there's no lever, so to speak, against Hamas beyond just saying that we will not move on to the second phase, which is what Hamas does want.
Your biggest fear is that come Monday or Tuesday, but probably Monday, when all these hostages are released, your biggest fear is your son won't be among them because Hamas will say that we can't find him?
Yeah, and you just don't know what reality is. It could be, for example, Itai being a U.S. citizen and Hamas wanting the U.S. to continue to be engaged. They'll just say, oh, we lost him. And now what? And that will just keep the U.S. engaged in the process, which is something they might want. That's why we've been asking Mr. Witkoff and the administration to do whatever they can to make sure that Itai and Omel Nutra, the other U.S. citizens, to come out as soon as possible to make sure that that scenario does not.
We've had you on this show, Ruby, so many times. You and I have spoken. Tell our audience about your son, Itai. He's the youngest American hostage being held. He was serving in the IDF. He was born in New York, loves basketball, loves singing, loves dancing. Tell me a little bit about him.
Yeah, I think the best hobby he had was actually testing his boundaries with me. So we would typically get into fights about, what time is he coming back and, taking the car keys and all that stuff. And he would, at one point, would say, well, Dad, why are we wasting so much time and energy? I'm going to go to Mom. Mom's going to say yes anyway. So why, not get to the end point and move on? He, as a loving girlfriend, he always felt as he didn't have that much time and he did, so many things. And he just wanted to excel in whatever he did. Even in the IDF, he wanted to excel, and he had plans what to do afterwards, as he does have not just a U.S. passport, but actually also a German passport. My wife is of German descendant, so that kind of opened up a lot of doors for him to go any place and do anything. And my wife and I always wondered what type of future he has, because he could have gone to so many different directions, and we still hope that that future lays ahead of him.
Ruby Chen, we're thinking about you and sending prayers to you and your wife as you go through this, and we hope for the best for you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Elizabeth.
Ruby Chen praying for a miracle. All right, from news in the Middle East to big news here in our nation's capital. 10 days into the government shutdown, it is starting to resemble Doge 2.0. as the Trump administration is making good on a promise to lay off thousands of federal employees. Stepping into the role of Elon Musk is Russ Vought, the director of the Office of Management and Budget. He just might be the most powerful man in Washington whose name was relatively unknown outside the Beltway, until recently when he was featured as the Grim Reaper in a video released by the White House. Well, Russ Vought made an announcement on X today. Quite simply, the RIFs, or reductions in force, have begun. He did not specify which agencies or how many people will be laid off. A statement from OMB says the layoffs are, quote, substantial, with no other detail. NewsNation has learned the layoffs hit employees across the government. The Departments of Health and Human Services, the Treasury, Education, Energy, and Housing and Urban Development are all affected, just to name a few. NewsNation's Libby Dean is live at the White House for us with more. Libby, the president just said in the Oval Office, quote, it will be a lot of people laid off, and said that they will be Democrat-oriented areas that are hit hardest. What have you learned?
That's the president's message tonight, Elizabeth. And every hour or so here at the White House today, we've been learning these new details about this major reduction in the federal workforce. A White House official telling me tonight that thousands of federal employees are being fired. And we're just getting that all confirmed, these new numbers confirmed in a DOJ court filing. It specifies 7 federal agencies conducted a reduction in force today, firing over 4,000 federal employees. If we take a closer look here at the numbers, at the agencies, the Education, Energy, Commerce, Department of Homeland Security, also Housing and Urban Development Department. Firings, those ranged from around 100 to 500 employees. You see that on your screen there. While HHS, the Health and Human Services Department, cut up to 1,200 jobs. Now, the largest cut, though, impacted the Treasury Department with over 1,400 employees fired. Here is the president explaining moments ago the reasoning behind these cuts.
It'll be a lot, and we'll announce the numbers over the next couple of days, but it'll be a lot of people, all because of the Democrats.
So likely more to come here, as a lot of agencies claim these employees who were fired today and got these reduction in force notices were non-essential employees. That's what the Trump administration and a lot of these agencies are claiming. And these are the firings, really, that the Trump administration has been crafting since this government shutdown really began. And we're already seeing them face these legal challenges as well. Elizabeth.
Yeah, I think some of the lawsuits against the firings were filed before the firings even happened. So this will all play out in court. Libby Dean from the White House, thank you so much. All right, coming up for us, President Trump just made a big Oval Office announcement on lowering drug prices for some Americans. How many will actually feel relief? FDA Commissioner Marty Makary has the answers to those questions. He's coming up next. The Trump administration isn't just cutting the federal workforce. It is also looking to cut drug prices, at least for some Americans. Studies show that the United States spends more, much more, on prescription drugs than any other country in the world. That could soon change. President Trump announced in the Oval Office this afternoon, actually almost this evening, a deal with AstraZeneca to lower the cost of drugs for low-income Americans, saying it will save them hundreds of millions of dollars every year.
AstraZeneca, the largest pharmaceutical manufacturer in the United Kingdom, is committing to offer Americans major discounts on their vast catalog of prescription drugs, one of the great companies, by the way, and a most favored nation's pricing clause. So most favored nation is you're going to pay whatever the lowest price anywhere in the world is. That's what you're going to be paying.
Now, the medications will be available through a government website called trumprx.gov. The homepage prompts users to find their medication for the lowest price. The site officially launches in January. This is the latest move from the White House to lower prices for Americans and their prescription drugs. Just last week, Trump announced a deal with Pfizer to cut prices on that company's drugs. The deals also come as the drug industry looks to get around tariffs and other regulations, in case you're wondering why they're coming to the table. Joining us now is FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary. Doctor, great to have you back on the show. So,
good to be with you.
This Trump RX website provides drugs direct to consumers. How does it work exactly?
So it's going to be a central place where we curate the drugs where people can go direct. And it's not the government selling the drug. It's a place where it will allow you to connect directly with the seller of the drug, the pharmaceutical company, so you can bypass the middleman entirely. You know, the price of healthcare goes up every year. And if you really want the root causes, it is the price, the overpriced products and services of healthcare, and it's the middlemen of healthcare. That's why the U.S. is an international outlier in how much we spend. And so this website will allow people to go directly. And let me give you an example, Elizabeth. There's a inhaler for COPD, a common comorbid condition in the United States. It goes for $450. By going to this site, you can buy it direct for $60. So we're
if you're
talking
not
about
buying it, but if you're not buying it from the
actually lowering
government,
prices.
Who are you buying it from?
Look, there are going to be links, and the links are going to take you directly to the seller, which is the maker of the drug. You're not going to be buying it from a PBM who buys it through your employer-sponsored healthcare consortium, which is getting it through an insurance company. You're not going to have 50 layers of middlemen marking up the price of the medication. You're going to buy it directly at the best price in the developed world. It's called most favored nation status pricing. The president has said we are the biggest purchasers of drugs in the world. We deserve the best price among developed countries in the world, and that's what Americans will have access to.
Can any American go on this website and buy their prescription drugs that way?
Yes, the whole point is to have a meaningful reduction in drug prices. We're not talking about the Inflation Reduction Act allowing the government to negotiate pennies less on a series of 10 drugs. We're talking about all the medications of these giant pharma companies that have stepped up and taken this pledge, all of them being available directly to consumers.
But I ask because the deal with Pfizer and AstraZeneca that was announced, thank you. You just ran from the Oval Office to join our camera, so I appreciate it. But you were just in the Oval Office talking about this deal, and you keep talking about the fact that people on Medicaid will have access to these drugs. That's only 20% of the American population. Does the other 80% that's not on Medicaid also get access to these deals?
Yes, they do, and they get access directly from the seller through the TrumpRx website, which will connect them to the seller. So yes, it will be available. Now, perhaps an insurance company will realize that they're selling it directly on TrumpRx at 1/10 the price that the insurance company itself sells the same drug for. And so in that case, there's going to be a reckoning of the marketplace. And you're going to see people say, hey, wait a minute, the price if I buy it direct is lower than the copay my insurance company charges. And remember, the most expensive drugs in healthcare are not the generics. They are the biologics and the new molecules that are being approved under market exclusivity. And that's where these companies have said no longer are they going to charge 50 or $100 in the UK or France and thousands of dollars to the United States. They've agreed to stop price gouging Americans so that we are financing the research and development for the world. No longer other European countries and wealthy nations will now pay their fair share of research and development costs. It's an important thing, research and development, but the United States, in the view of this president, should not be financing the R&D for the entire world and then get the worst price in return.
Well, that certainly sounds reasonable, but research and development is crucial. I mean, that largely takes place here in the United States. How are the drug companies going to fund their research and development for these life-saving and life-changing medications if they're no longer getting, top dollar from, hard-hit Americans?
They're lowering their price in the United States, and to some degree, they're going to be increasing their price in some other developed countries that have gotten a sweetheart deal as we finance the R&D of the world. So you're going to see an equalizing of prices that's going to globally lower prices in the United States. And remember, we took significant action on direct-to-consumer drug ads. The marketing budgets of major pharma companies are 20 to 25% of their overall budget.
Yeah.
We've asked companies to use that money to lower drug prices for everyday Americans, and they can do it. We've got to stop price gouging. People have talked about it. Very little has happened. This is the most significant healthcare reform to date to lower the price of healthcare. Every other healthcare reform throws good money after bad into a broken, overpriced system. This is a new day in America.
All right, Dr. Marty Makary, thanks for breaking it down for us. All Americans, you say, can go on this website, not just those on Medicaid. So that's a very, very big deal. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
That's right. Thanks so much, Elizabeth.
All right, coming up for us, New York City could be just weeks away from electing a socialist mayor. It's not just the rich and the big businesses that are saying sayonara. The NYPD. Police officers are threatening to retire in droves. We're going to get into that story next. In New York City tonight, a bona fide horse race may be shaping up in the upcoming mayoral election now that incumbent Mayor Eric Adams dropped out of the race. A new poll now shows the numbers tightening between the frontrunner, Zoran Mamdani, a self-described Democratic socialist, and independent candidate, former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. With less than a month before the election, the Quinnipiac poll shows Mamdani is still leading at 46%, but Cuomo has closed the gap to 33%. Compare that to numbers a month ago when Mayor Adams was still in the race. It suggests that nearly all of Adams' supporters have turned to the three-term ex-governor. Team Cuomo was touting the numbers as an indication of fresh momentum, but Mamdani still holds a double-digit lead. Mamdani has used catchy social media posts to capture voters' attention, and his message is polarizing, to say the least, drawing negative reactions from detractors around the country, including at the White House from President Trump, and at home in the city he's running to lead. Among them are members of New York City's police department who view the city's possible new mayor with a mixture of fear and dread. They remember how Mamdani once advocated to defund the police. Mamdani has since backed off that stance. But for members of the country's largest police department, it is hard to forget comments like that. And many are wondering if Mamdani wins, should they stay on the police force? We're joined now by Olivia Reingold, staff writer for the Free Press, and Joe Cardinale, former lieutenant commander with the New York City Police Department. So, Olivia, you've spoken to several of these NYPD officers. What are they telling you? Might they really quit?
Well, I didn't meet a single Mamdani voter. And, I spoke to officers across the political spectrum. They feel like their jobs, especially after BLM, are already hard enough. And the bottom line is that they feel like Mamdani is not going to have their backs. I mean, look at what he wants to do with CCRB, the Civilian Complaint Control Board. He wants to give final disciplinary control to that review board instead of the police commissioner. And these officers just see that as another sign of, even though he's trying to walk back those defund the police statements, they feel
that
like
he doesn't have their back.
That's who he really is to them.
Joe, the NYPD is the largest police department in the U.S. Even so, they're short-staffed. They have the fewest number of officers since 1994. They cannot afford to lose more.
And yet they will. This is the best snake oil salesman you'll see. He'll promise them the world and hand them a map. That's what this man does. And Olivia's right. One of the key issues would be CCRB, because he wants complete control to say, if this officer did this or that wrong, he or she, they want the right to fire them instead of the police commissioner who can actually review these incidents. But, combine that with the fact that they do not have qualified indemnification, that the city council is constantly undermining them, and that they have a CCRB review, the Civilian Complaint Review Board is manned by people that can't stand them already. They have a few former chiefs on there, but this is the direction that they're going. So you're going to have people that have 10 years on, they'll vest, they'll take their chances in another police department, and you're going to lose the remaining cops that are there, the few that are there that have the 20 years that they want to stay on, that they try to entice them to stay on longer. And they're going to go saying, there's no way I'm putting my pension on the line for this. I'm out of here. And they're going to retire. Then those numbers are going to drop.
Olivia, the political graveyard is littered with the gravestones of progressive mayors who promised free housing and free stuff, and then crime took them down because, yes, free rent, low rent, free buses, free food, all sounds super great. But if you've got criminals and high crime on the streets and you don't feel safe, that's a deal killer for people in cities across the country.
I think many people after Trump's win in the last presidential election took that as a clear sign that, these identity politics, the BLM movement was not going to work for the Democratic Party going forward. And so I think this is a huge bellwether moment to see Mamdani, when he's elected, if he carries on this torch of BLM right through City Hall.
Yeah. All right. Joe, the former Andrew Cuomo, who's the former governor, has pledged to hire 2,000 new police officers if he is elected mayor. He also has said that the city needs to start removing, this is a problem not just in New York City but across the country, that the city needs to start removing drug-addicted or mentally ill people off the streets, or in New York's case, off the subways, even if it's against their will. Mamdani is not saying that. He is saying we need to take a more compassionate approach. What do you make of that very stark difference?
It just shows you that Mamdani has no clue how to run this city. All right, these are very disturbed individuals. Mayor Giuliani knew how to do it. He took them off the streets, and that's what I think Governor Cuomo, ex-Governor Cuomo, wants to take a page out of that book. But, make no mistake about it, this man will do anything and say anything to get into that position, which is the mayor. And don't forget, one thing that people are forgetting, Mayor Adams' name will still be on that ballot. So people may still go over there, but his name will still be on that ballot. He's maybe out of the race, but he's still on the ballot. So that's going to throw a monkey wrench into the system as well. But this has to change, and New Yorkers have to realize. I mean, you select is it Curtis, is it ex-Governor Cuomo, or is it Mamdani? You would have to go with Curtis or the ex-governor, because this man will say anything to get into that seat. And you watch the damage that's going to be done. You'll see Wall Street move right out.
Yeah. Listen, Olivia, I found this very interesting. This one poll said that only 39% of the people polled think Mamdani has the experience to lead the city. 73% say Andrew Cuomo has the necessary experience. And yet Mamdani's winning in the poll, which seems to indicate New Yorkers are willing to take a gamble on somebody who is going to be learning on the job.
Well, this election, based on my reporting, this is not really about policy. It's certainly not about experience. It's kind of about vibes, I think you could say. What Mamdani is doing, it's a populist movement. And so a lot of his policies, when you unpack them, I read the Department of Community Safety Plan. It's 17 pages. I still have a lot of questions about how it's going to work, if he will have to pull in money from NYPD. So experience, it's not that.
Yeah. Olivia Reingold, Joe Cardinale, buckle up, folks. It's going to be a very interesting last 4 weeks before Election Day. All right, coming up, the federal layoffs begin and the government shutdown seems to have no end in sight. House lawmakers won't even be in town next week. Chris Cuomo joins me live to discuss next. So President Trump from the Oval Office this evening announced that layoffs had begun. We are told it will be thousands of employees, and the president made it clear they're from, quote, Democrat-oriented programs and areas. Chris Cuomo is here joining me now. What do you make of the layoffs? Are you delving into that on your show, the peace deal? I mean, there's so much news.
As your people would say, que lastima. What a shame. What a shame that the president thinks, yeah, su gente dice esto, that this is a shame.
Chris Cuomo.
This is a shame that the president feels that it is good for him to say he is punishing federal workers that are in programs Democrats liked. I mean, it plays on a mythology about bloated federal government. You and I know the numbers haven't changed for decades.
Yeah.
But here we are. And there are things to address tonight, and I'm going to get after it.
Well, they've changed this year for sure. We're down, now close to 200,000 employees already. So this is going to do more. I will be watching. Chris Cuomo, have a great show and a great weekend.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.